All righty, you're free to proceed.
Okay. Members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2 o'clock on November, I guess today is the 12th, isn't it? Okay, November 12th, 2021. And I would like to call, please, the roll. Barry Covington. Barry, you're muted.
Here.
John Dewey.
Here.
Mike Strange.
Here.
Rachel Macha.
Here.
Jim Ellison.
Here.
Julie Davis.
Here.
Nan Hunter.
Here.
Steve Kaufman.
Here.
We have a full complement of commissioners, and so the meeting is in order. Ms. Womack, would you please verify the meeting notice?
Chairman, the agenda for the Planning Commission regular meeting was posted on November 5th and sent out from the portal on the same day. It was amended on November 10th and reposted on the same day. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. As to correspondence, Ms. Womack, I see that we have an email with attachment received November 9th from Wynn Aschenbaum concerning opposition to FAR variances request. I assume this is part of the Belhaven matter?
Yes, it is.
My only concern about that is that we're being asked to make, as part of our record, a document that really is addressed to and part of a board of adjustment matter that's really, why that comes into our record, I just have some concerns about, since it's not directly a planning commission issue, it is a board of adjustment variance issue. Unless someone objects, we can go ahead and admit it at this particular time, but would like to caution those in the future who might want to send notices that it would be appropriate to send it to the body for which that matter is to be adjudicated, not simply to the Planning Commission because we're the Planning Commission. So go ahead and, unless someone has an objection, let's go ahead and admit that, but with the caveat that in the future we'd like to only receive communications concerning matters pending before this body.
Mike,
Yes.
I think it's appropriate here to admit it only because we're being asked to support the request for a variance, and I think it's addressed to us because of that reason stated why we shouldn't do it. So I think it is part of the record.
Okay. Well, then, as I say, it's admitted as part of the record. I simply wanted to raise that concern concerning future matters.
I think it should also be mentioned that it's not just Lynn Achenbach. The letter was signed by 114 additional either residents or property owners in the city.
Right. I understand that. Okay. As to old business, the election of officers.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
There was also another piece of correspondence that was sent in by Rick Harry. I forwarded it on to the Planning Commission this morning.
All right, ma'am. And that is part of our record, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Election of officers. This can always be a bit awkward. As I said a year ago when officers were elected, that in my view, a vote for someone is not a vote against someone else, that it's important that we maintain the collegiality, and in fact, the bylaws of the Planning Commission state the election of officers of the Planning Commission shall be conducted in such a manner and in good faith by the chairperson consistent with applicable law so as to mitigate any potential adverse effects to the collegiality of the Planning Commission. So I'm hopeful that we can accomplish that. I believe that I am the only nominee for chair, so that's resolved. For vice chair, we have nominees as Stephen Kaufman and Nan Hunter. What I would like to do, unless you tell me differently, is to simply ask for a show of hands for each each candidate. And if the candidates wish to speak as well, let's go ahead and do that first. And maybe that would be appropriate. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the commission. As you all know, we do elect officers every year. So for me, this may be my last opportunity to help in the administration of the Planning Commission as my term ends when this current year term ends. I'm very interested in serving as the vice chair. I have very extensive experience in land use matters and comprehensive development plans in general, and in zoning text amendments and in zoning ordinances, as I have 45 years experience as a land use attorney and also as a public attorney, as assistant county attorney for a major jurisdiction. Over the last 2 years, since I was originally appointed in 2018, I have assisted every previous chair with some fairly complex matters when called upon for my expertise. And so I would very much like the opportunity to serve as an officer given this last year of my, of my time potentially on the board. Whether I'll be reappointed or not, I don't know at this time. I would hope so. And I would ask that the other members support my candidacy. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hunter.
Thank you. To just introduce myself a bit more to my co-commissioners, I've owned a home in Rehoboth Beach since 1998, and I now co-own with my spouse the house where we live on Munson Street in downtown Rehoboth, and another property downtown that we rent. Rehoboth is extremely important to me. In some ways, I think of it as almost my second hometown, since I grew up in a beach town, specifically Wilmington, North Carolina. And friends have told me that I never met a beach I didn't like. My main reason for seeking to join the Planning Commission, and this is what I told the mayor when we talked about it, is to help Rehoboth meet its current and future challenges, which are, I think, almost unique. We are a physically small space occupied almost entirely by single-family homes and small businesses, and heavily dependent on our revenue for our appeal to vacationers as well as residents. And that combination requires us to develop policies that foster a small town charm, which I think draws our vacationers and tourists back and what they want and expect, while at the same time maintaining a service infrastructure that's adequate to provide for residents and visitors, and to maintain the businesses and the tradition of small businesses that we have in our downtown area. So my commitment to the mayor and my commitment to you would be to serve as a collegial force on the Planning Commission, to give fair and impartial review to every proposal that comes before us, and to seek to preserve that balance, which I think is almost unique. In the past, numerous decades, I have been a law professor. I recently retired from my professorship at Georgetown Law School in Washington, D.C., and I'm now emeritus. And it was during that time as a law professor when I taught a number of courses. But one of the courses which I taught many times was a course that focused on process and on close reading of statutes and administrative regulations. And those skills, those specific skills, I think, will be helpful to me as a member of the Planning Commission, and also in the way that I can assist Mike, who will serve as chair, and assist other members of the Planning Commission as well. So I do respectfully request your support. Thank you.
Anyone else? Are we ready to vote? All right.
As a technical matter, we didn't vote on you as president, which even though you're it in terms of chair, I think it's appropriate to have the rest of the members vote on that.
Well, since I'm the only nominee and at the risk of being embarrassed, I will ask you to show hands, please, for my confirmation of my chairmanship. Fortunately, no one said no.
Hey, Mike, raise your hand. There you go.
Unanimous.
Okay, for the vice chair, we have two eminently qualified members, and I must tell you, I'm thankful for that on everything that we work on, whether you're an officer or not, because all of you have been just wonderful. Could I see a show of hands for Mr. Kaufman, please? 1, 2, Steve?
I'm up there.
3. I have 3 votes, and for Nan Hunter? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Ms. Hunter is vice chair. And for secretary, we have Steve Kaufman, Julie Davis, and John Dewey as the candidates. Steve, do you wish to speak again?
No, I don't want to run for this office.
Okay. Julie Davis, would you like to introduce yourself, please, and give us your campaign for secretary?
I did not nominate myself. I will do it because I think the role of secretary is and should be important. I realize that Ms. Womack does the minutes and she does an outstanding job. They are detailed, they are comprehensive, and they are in plain English, which is greatly appreciated. That said, I think that there may be a role for an attorney or lawyer to play because so much of what goes on in our business, in our meetings, does have legal implications, and maybe a set of eyes to review and perhaps on occasion with Womack on some of the language in the minutes might be helpful and appropriate.
John Dewey.
This would be a good opportunity for me to give some of my background so that folks know a little bit about me. I have been a part-time resident of Rehoboth since about 1985. My partner Gary and I purchased our first home here in that year, although we had been visitors here since the early 70s. We bought a small cottage on Philadelphia Street, put a lot of sweat equity into it, and in 1996, we're fortunate to be able to buy a vacant lot on Scarborough Avenue, directly across from the property formerly known as Walls, and built our current home there. It's our plan to remain sharing our time between our residence in Old Newcastle and our home here on Scarborough Avenue. We both value Rehoboth because of its walkability, easy access to amenities, including shops and restaurants, but most particularly the sense of community that this small town provides to us. We particularly value, related to that, having been able to set down roots in a very particular neighborhood in South Rehoboth. They're Philadelphian Christian. It's a neighborhood where people have known each other for years and years, and it was a particularly welcoming place for us to be. Related to the work of the Planning Commission, I retired about 4 years ago from a role as a special educator. I've primarily worked with youngsters with severe disabilities, including autism, always in a public school setting. The majority of my career was as a school administrator, and I capstoned my career as a district executive in special education. Those roles are relevant to the Planning Commission because of my need to rely on analyzing data, using state data management and planning tools, and in particular, using stakeholder-based strategies to make sure that we had plans and communicate it well with our community so that we always had buy-in from our parents and from our business partners. Autism in the state of Delaware receives its services through a statewide model. That unique model allowed me to have ongoing contact with professionals as well as legislators up and down the state. So apart from attorneys, that gave me an opportunity to have a deeper understanding of how public processes work, particularly in this state. As a public school administrator at the building level and at the district level, I was required to annually provide updated plans, short-term and long-term. Those plans were based on stakeholder engagement, student data, community data, and how we were going to use those resources to leverage towards our school goals or our district goals. A bit of a nod to the attorneys in the room. You may recognize autism is one of the more litigious areas of special education. And having worked in that field for the number of years that I did, what I most came to exercise as a part of my professional toolkit was to make sure that we were always coming back to the law and to regulation when we were needing to make decisions about how to best leverage resources to assist a child and a family in meeting our shared goals. The strategies that I used particularly were following process and assuring that there was transparency between school teams, parents, and parent attorneys. On a more personal note, I grew up in the city of Philadelphia in small self-contained neighborhoods. I've lived in Old Newcastle for over 45 years, and we've been in Rehoboth for 36 years. And those experiences together, really a lifetime of experiences, really bring to bear for livable, walkable towns, distinct neighborhoods, vibrant businesses, but most particularly areas that maintain a strong sense of community. I was particularly honored by the mayor to have been nominated to be a member of this commission, and I look forward to working together with everybody. Regarding possibly being considered for a role of secretary, I think I can bring to the table particularly strong organizational skills, communication skills. I'm good at organizing and maintaining records, and particularly, as I said, around maintaining transparency and being open. And with that, I'll close my remarks, and I thank you for your attention.
Anyone else? Could I please have a show of hands for Julie Davis? 1, 2, 3, 4. And for John Dewey? 1, 2, 3. Steve, is your hand up? I can't. I see 3. 4, 3. I'm missing somebody. 1, 2.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, you're abstaining. Jim Ellison, did you vote? Okay, and are you voting for John Dewey or Julie Davis? You're muted, sir.
Julie Davis.
Okay, let's do this again, please.
I'm sorry, I may be part of this problem. I didn't vote, and I guess I will vote for myself if that will complete the circle.
Okay, could I have a show of hands for Julie Davis, please, for secretary? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and for John Dewey? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Julie, for better or for worse, you are the secretary.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's right. And thank everybody. We have elections every year, so roles change. Yes, sir.
I just want to wish Jan and Julie the best of luck this year. And I understand that it's, those two offices are in very good hands, and I'll do whatever I can to help you in your roles.
Thank you, sir. Very gracious.
Thank you, Steve. That is very gracious. I appreciate it.
Now, there is an agenda change for today I want everyone to be aware of, particularly those who may have called in to speak. Mr. Hutt, Attorney David Hutt, has asked that the 330 Rehoboth Avenue change of zone request be deferred until our December meeting. He had an exhibit prepared that was to be, as I understand it, attached to a change in the proposed covenants that he was intended to submit. That exhibit was not ready until almost as recently as yesterday or the day before. And in keeping with the Planning Commission's policy about not wanting to consider late submissions, he very kindly asked that we defer that until the December meeting. Next matter on the agenda would be the continued concept review for the proposed Belhaven Hotel properties located at 2 Rehoboth Avenue, lots 2, 4, 6, 17, and 18 block, Rehoboth, and lot numbers 3, 5, 7, and 9 block, Wilmington. And that is for the limited purpose of receiving public comment. By way of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, we have, at the request of the applicant, set this matter for hearing, or actually discussion, I apologize. Pursuant to section 236-31 of the code of the city, it states that the Planning Commission and the applicant shall review and discuss any issues or concerns related to the proposed project. That statute continues on, and we'll talk about the rest of that later. But we have, at the request of the applicant who wanted the commission to have that discussion and review, we have set that for the agenda as an agenda item on the meeting that we're having next Thursday, at a special meeting that we're having at 2 o'clock next Thursday. And that will be on the agenda for that purpose at that time. So today is simply for public comment, and then we will come back and consider this matter and discuss it one last time next Thursday so that the applicant has the appropriate opportunity to discuss this matter with the commission. Ms. Womack, I have a list of folks who have called in, but I'm not sure who's still here. If you were to speak to the 330 Rehoboth Avenue, then I suspect that would be David Hutt. If you are intending to speak anyway, please let me know. Carlton Savage, Surab Srivastava, and perhaps Mark Saunders. Okay, and who is that, sir? Mark Saunders, all right. And anyone else who may have called in that wants to speak to the 330 Rehoboth Avenue topic? Okay. Mr. Saunders, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, sir. I'm the president of the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association. And for any of you not familiar with us, we have approximately 750 members, including 500 families. And of course, our agenda is basically the homeowners of Rehoboth Beach, the character of our town, and the quality of life that we enjoy here in Rehoboth. We're here to speak about 330 Rehoboth Avenue, but really we're here to speak about the adjoining lot on State Street, because that's the one that is of concern to us, and the possible rezoning of that from commercial to residential. Our concern is not that the hotel goes up or that even a parking lot goes in. We're fine with that, actually. What our concern is that once that zoning changes, that's forever. And the hotel can tomorrow decide to sell out to XYZ from New York City, who may want to put something far less desirable on that now more valuable commercial lot. So we would beg this board to please consider making some sort of alternative arrangements to accommodate the hotel, perhaps some sort of a variance or a special exception by which the parking lot would only be allowed under the condition that it was for the hotel's use and not for any other use later on. And that's really all I have to say today.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, on the Belhaven matter, any other members of the public? I have Dr. Michael Trejos and Rick Perry and I have one other, I believe, Allison Blythe. Are any of those folks online?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
If you want to speak first.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dr. Trejos. I can speak first if you'd like.
Yes, sir, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first off, this is Dr. Michael Trejo speaking. First, I would like to congratulate all the new members on the Planning Commission. Welcome, and thank you for serving on this important commission. Mr. Chairman, for a procedural note, are you, again, just to reiterate, the original letter that was submitted by the applicant and their additional design plans for the 2.0 and the 3.0, that's going to be occurring this coming Thursday, you stated?
Well, we're not starting the concept review process over. What we are doing is, as set forth in the city code, we are reviewing and discussing any issues or concerns related to the proposed project with the applicant.
I see, very good. All right, the reason I'm saying is that I will go ahead and make some preliminary comments that I would do for today. As you're aware, I was the one who submitted the comments that were titled the Board of Adjustment. The reason I did that was in response to the applicant and his statement that they wanted to respond to, quote, comments made by the public, unquote. But we need to remember that the vast majority of the supposed comments made by the public were all made in submissions to the most recent Board of Adjustment meeting, which in turn, upon seeing this later, prompted me to then submit this information to this commission in order to make sure that the record is complete. And that was the reason why. So again, I will make some preliminary comments now. Unfortunately, I have a medical practice that I am engaged with on a Thursday afternoon, which may or may not permit me to make any comments. So I'll try to make the main point comments today. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just again notate that again, I'm Dr. Michael Trejo. I am one of the co-owners of the properties located at Lot 15 and Lot 16 Surf Avenue, which reads 7 through 15 South Boardwalk, and Lot 1 Wilmington Avenue. These businesses located at these properties include Gus and Gus, Starkey's Ice Cream, Toddle Rave 5 and 10, the Funnel Cake Factory, Zog's Bar and Grill, and Dave and Skippy's. I wish to begin first and foremost by stating that I and my extended family are generally in support of the renovation of the property to create some form of a Belhaven hotel that mirror images what historically was at the turn of the 20th century. We feel that this would be a wonderful addition and an appropriate change to that area and would significantly improve the environment of that area. However, our family does have certain issues that we wish to address before the Planning Commission. First off, I wanted to just discuss a procedural matter, which actually Glenn Mendelis, our solicitor, may or may not be able to have some additional input. It goes as follows. As a procedural matter, all of the lots that is proposed for the Belhaven Hotel will be constructed and owned by essentially the Papa John family. However, these lots have yet to be combined into one lot pursuant to the Code of Rehoboth Beach 270-46.1 and Sussex County property tax records. This therefore raises the question as to whether or not this application to permit a allowable FAR of 2.0 to exceed to 3.0 is actually ripe for it to be heard by either this Planning Commission or even the Board of Adjustment, given the fact that, that the applicant has yet to take the procedural steps and receive the approval to unify the lots into one lot pursuant to the Code of Rehoboth Beach, and in light of the recent Court of Chancellery ruling in the case of Ocean Bay Mark Inc. versus City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, CA number 2019-0467-SG of one building, one lot. The second item I would like to discuss with you deals with the issue of fire safety in this regard. A little bit of further background, for some of you already know, but some may not. I am the physician commissioner for the City of Alexandria, and I also serve at the equivalent position as a member of the Fairfax County Healthcare Advisory Board. Our board is responsible for the construction of new entities such as assisted facilities, nursing facilities, and we have to go through all of the plans and we help us assist in the approval of those before they go to the Board of Supervisors for approval. Our main concern is public safety, and you will hear me always, and those who have possibly looked at previous videos will know that my focus is always with public safety. The first thing we need to remember is that because the Belhaven Hotel exceeds the 50,000 square foot, the applicant was required to go before the Delaware Preliminary Land Use Plus Agency. On September 22nd, 2021, a virtual Plus meeting was held to review the Belhaven application. During the Plus meeting, Dwayne Fox, Assistant Chief of the Delaware State Fire Marshal's Office, discussed the State Fire Marshal's concerns regarding the Belhaven project as it was currently proposed and currently before you. Specifically, Dwayne Fox stated that the Belhaven Hotel was lacking the required fire safety setback around the entire perimeter of the proposed Belhaven Hotel structure for proper fire department access. Currently, the applicant's plans provide for no public safety, or I'm sorry, buffer setback for fire, i.e. setback from the applicant's property's lines. As a result, this raises the question as to whether it is appropriate or prudent for either this Board of Planning Commission or even the Board of Adjustment for that matter to even consider or look into any sort of a FAR variance or even looking at this application request until such time as the applicant has submitted the appropriate plans to incorporate the appropriate fire safety setback requirements as will be required by the Delaware State Fire Marshal's Office. Permitting a FAR of 3.0 without the appropriate fire safety setback poses a significant concern if there were to be a fire in the central core of the Belhaven Hotel. In my submission to you, I submitted photographs showing what the central core looks like. If there was to be a fire in the central core of the Belhaven Hotel, especially if the hotel is 4 stories tall, without the appropriate fire safety setback from the property lines within the central core, the only means by which fire EMS crews will have access to the central core is by utilizing the roof of my family's boardwalk properties to set up water cannons and by using my family's 1 Wilmington Avenue property to run hoses and fire suppression equipment through, especially through the Zog's restaurant patio area, in order to shoot water into the central core of the Belhaven Hotel. All property owners understand and accept the rare secondary use of adjacent properties to gain access to a property in the event of a fire EMS incident. However, such secondary access must be rare and not considered to be a primary or core primary means of access in the event of a fire EMS incident, as would be the case in the current Belhaven plans. As a result, the lack of a fire safety setback from the property lines within the central core of the Belhaven Hotel, combined with the applicant's desire to build such a larger hotel than the code currently permits, poses a significant concern for the ability of fire EMS personnel to put out a fire in the central core of the Belhaven Hotel, to rescue guests inside the hotel in cases of an emergency, and risks extensive damage to both my family's properties and neighboring properties such as the Go Fish building located at Lot 4, 24 Rehoboth Avenue, adjacent to the proposed Belhaven Hotel. I will not, there are some additional issues that will need to be brought up later on if and when the applicant proceeds forward. But on a closing note, this is, I think, needs to be important. I truly believe that this Planning Commission, nor the Board of Adjustment for that matter, should be appropriately even deciding or looking at an application until the application is totally complete. We already have historical issues when this Planning Commission has attempted to deal with applications that are incomplete. It is my viewpoint that this application continues to be an incomplete application. And until such time as the applicant has submitted a fully complete, I's dotted, T's crossed application for consideration, I believe that this Planning Commission should table this matter until such time as the applicant has done so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next member of the public that signed up was Rick Perry. Mr. Perry, are you available?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Yes, please proceed, sir.
Okay, thank you. I did want to point out one thing. I know that you have on the agenda limited the purposes of this meeting to public citizen comment. I did find it odd, however, that none of the applicants were afforded a link just in case your mind might be changed. And it seems to me to be inappropriate to exclude, even from a limited purpose here, the applicant themselves. I don't know whether that can be rectified or if you would want to do that, but I did want to point out that they did not receive a link to this meeting. I also want to respond to one thing quickly that Dr. Trejo said. He said that the Planning Commission has a history of considering incomplete applications. I do believe that's an inaccurate statement, and it's unfair to the Planning Commission. I also want to point out that this is a concept plan review. It is not an application at this point, and the code does not contemplate that a concept plan review request to the Planning Commission require a complete application. That's not the intent of the purpose of these types of reviews. As Ms. Womack mentioned at the outset, I did submit a letter, which unfortunately, because yesterday turned out to be a federal holiday and a state holiday, it was unable to get embedded into the agenda. I had originally intended not to focus too much on the content of that letter because I had expected it would be embedded in the agenda. And I wanted to speak about the economic feasibility of development projects in downtown Rehoboth. Under the circumstances, I do want to, however, cover some in more detail some of the aspects of my letter so that the public is aware of it. I understand that my letter and the exhibit with it will be included in the agenda after this meeting. I believe the Belhaven Hotel proposal presents the Planning Commission and the City of Rehoboth with an unprecedented opportunity to demonstrate that as a community, we are dedicated to sensible, and that's defined as chosen in accordance with wisdom or prudence, likely to be of benefit, and rational, that's defined as based on or in accordance with reason or logic when it comes to revitalization of our downtown commercial district. It strikes me that in terms of the unprecedented nature of this opportunity, the testimony from the applicant at the previous meeting indicated that this building as proposed really is a step forward to the future. And in many ways is something that, in my view, should be strongly supported for what it contributes, not just in terms of character to the location, to the economic vitality of our community, but what it is demonstrating as a commitment of our community to addressing climate change. It includes solar panels, it includes a living roof. It's intended to be a net zero project. And the intent is that the building will use no more energy than the site will generate. Those are incredibly laudable things that the city should embrace and not discourage through overly restrictive code provisions that are going to stand in the way of what, as I believe it was John Papajohn who said at the last meeting, what is best for Rehoboth. And those things should be taken into consideration, which leads into the other points that I was making in my letter, that far too often I hear these entreaties that we have to preserve the charm and character of the past and a sense of place. But those entreaties, in my view, are neither premised on the charm and character of the past nor a sense of place. Yes, they're catchy phrases and they sound very good. But what those supporters really mean is that they're opposed to what they perceive as a size and bulk issue. And that leads really to the issue at hand. A document that was submitted to the Board of Adjustment and now submitted for the record to the Planning Commission quotes from the 2010 Comprehensive Development Plan that we should avoid outsized and inappropriate development. The obvious premise of that argument and mistaken assumption is that if the variance were granted, it would result in an outsized and inappropriate development. Therein lies the problem, because nothing's farther from the truth. The opponents have conflated two issues here, namely bulk or size of the building and the architectural design. And they are by no means the same. To demonstrate that there is no change in the bulk of the total bar 3.0, the Belhaven's architect prepared a side-by-side comparison of a hotel built to the 2.0 FAR limitation and a hotel built to the 3.0 FAR limitation. There's a 5-page presentation that was submitted and is embedded in the agenda. I attached to my letter an updated version, which is a 9-page version, and includes some additional slides that even more starkly clearly the differences between the two buildings, but the bottom line is the bulk doesn't change. Height is the same, length's the same, width's the same. The difference is a 2.0 FAR results in a box, what everyone refers to as a Motel 6, and I don't know that it's truly fair to always use them as an example. Or you can get a hotel building at 3.0 that occupies the same amount of space. The difference is that the 3.0 building with the same amount of space as a 2.0 has amenities and other attributes that are expected in the 21st century by patrons. Clearly, as compared to a box, the 3.0 design is more architecturally desirable, and I believe is in keeping with the intent of the current CDP. At the same time, it is also more reminiscent of the historical past of the iconic corner, and that's why I believe that the 3.0 FAR version of the Belhaven Hotel is far more desirable and in keeping with the intent of the CDP, and it deserves your support. During the 3 years I served on the Planning Commission, an approach based on flexibility to provide some leeway in development in exchange for benefits provided to the city was supported by most of the planning commissioners for inclusion in the new CDP and its recommendations for amendments to the zoning code. The recent addition of a city planner consultant is part of moving the city in the right direction to explore such flexibility, secure those benefits, and lead to development in the commercial downtown district that will be a source of economic stability and sustainability for the foreseeable future. To ensure sensible, rational development, however, the public, the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, the Building and Licensing Department, and city administration must take a realistic hard look at their views as to what it is that preserves Rehoboth Beach's overall character, small town charm, and protects the character of distinctive groupings of buildings and streetscapes. It's important that the public come to grips with the fact that all things change. Clinging to false notions of what preserves charm and a sense of place need to be discarded unless your choice for the future of our city is characterized by a decline in the demographics, in residents and visitors, declines in the quality of restaurants and retailers, declines in property values, less revenue for the city from the businesses in the commercial district, and ultimately an increase in the tax burden on the residents. So I ask you to take the factors that I have mentioned into consideration, but also take into consideration the economic feasibility factors. They're not part of what the Planning Commission sees as elements of a site plan. They are not part of what the Planning Commission is charged with reviewing. Obviously, you don't need to decide whether or not a plan is economically feasible for a developer. But be that as it may, the reality of the world and the reality for the future of our city is that economic feasibility of development projects that will revitalize our downtown community are an extremely important element of what any property owner who seeks to redevelop the property, to improve the property, and to make it more attractive for our community does rest on the reality, the business reality of economic feasibility. And looking at it from the standpoint of a developer, it is essential that the city not impose, again, unrealistic and unneeded limitations on the ability of a property owner to develop the property and make a profit. These property owners are not 501c3s. We can't treat them like that. We have to understand how business operates. We need to understand the considerations that a property owner will necessarily have to take into consideration as they decide whether or not to move forward with a project. And I hope that you will adopt a more flexible approach and help developers overcome the unrealistic obstacles that I believe are in our current code and support before the Board of Adjustment the applicant's request for a variance from the FAR, because you get no more space occupied under a 3.0 or a 3.5 or whatever than you do under a 2.0. It's a false basis to criticize the project. What you get with a 3.0 is a quality, upscale oceanfront hotel, which is reminiscent of the history of that iconic location. And so I encourage you to be creative, be flexible, and to take those things into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I still have one last speaker. Is Allison Blythe on the line?
Yes.
Would you please proceed, ma'am? Thank you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Blythe, and I'm the owner of Lot 4 on Rehoboth Avenue, 24 Rehoboth Avenue, which houses my restaurant, Go Fish, and a 2-bedroom apartment above. I'm not sure if this is a little premature given what I've heard today as far as voicing my concerns. I mean, overall, I am generally in support of the hotel. Looking at the actual 2 plans, from an aesthetic point of view, the 3.0 version is preferable to me. First of all, aesthetically, but also because it doesn't impact the second floor. It impacts the front of the second floor of my apartment, covering the windows on the east side of the building, but not at the back of the building where I have bedrooms that only have windows on that side of the building. I mean, just so that people that don't know me or don't know, I have actually been operating that business for 20 years. I moved to Rehoboth in 1988 to open my first restaurant, La La Land, on Wilmington Avenue. And I've been just literally around that block for the last, more than 30 years. I've spent a lot of money on my building, and I would guess over the 20 years I've spent about $400,000 on improvements. When I took the building on, it was a takeout smoothie place, like a Planet Ice. I've installed the restaurant, which includes all the behind the scenes stuff, grease traps, all the electrics. Everything was ripped up to the out walls of that, both upstairs, both downstairs, and then later on upstairs when I actually took residence in that apartment myself in 2005. So I did a complete renovation of the apartment upstairs as well. And I rely on rental income from my restaurant and also from the rental from upstairs to pay my mortgage, which still has a number of years on it. On top of the mortgage, I did take out some equity loans to be able to do, these improvements. So I've been in business for 20 years, and I've built, I think, a very good business there. And the last few years have definitely been a struggle with COVID, but none the more for that. I see myself staying there for a very long time. As I said, I'm generally in support, but I do have mixed feelings about this, and I do have a list of concerns. And, I have to say, listening to Dr. Trejos's thing, safety is absolutely my number one issue. I mean, when you run a restaurant with a kitchen and everything that you have to watch out for that, I mean, there's a fire potential every day when you have a restaurant. And for 20 years, I mean, I have monthly deep cleans that go on. I don't know how I'm going to do that after the hotel's been built, because that's very noisy. And generally, I do that in the evening. I know there are ways around everything, but I have pest control going on there. I have my grease trap serviced. I do a lot of, maintenance stuff to keep that building safe for my customers from a health standpoint, and also certainly for safety. So one of my concerns is, and, I looked at the plans, I can't see in great detail, but it looks to me that there is absolutely no egress for me out the back of my restaurant. And I brought this up a couple of years ago at one of the other buildings, and the architect at the time did say, maybe there's a way for us that we can work on that and work with you. And he seemed to want to, work with me on my issues then. And that's where I'm coming from today. I do believe in progress. I do believe in something aesthetically pleasing. So, like I said, the 3-version build looks so much better. Honestly, if you want my opinion on the 2-version build, it looks more like a prison than a hotel. But that's just my feedback on that. And it didn't look like there was a pool there. And I do appreciate that people expect certain amenities. I expect them when I travel now. So, I want to work with this thing. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I do have grave concerns about how I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage during the whole build out process, but that is definitely down the line. But I want to mention that today, that's a concern. I mean, I know there's some asbestos buildings around me, and when they come down, the last thing I want to do is have my air intake from my kitchen buzzing along. And with the attaching to my building and potentially digging down for a parking lot, I mean, I don't expect my customers to sit there and eat lunch with me hammering a nail in the wall, let alone with that going on. So again, I can work around that if it's certainly with a timing situation, because, I do have another restaurant right now, Go Grit up the highway, but I still need to be able to operate in some capacity when the build out goes on. But again, I think that I'm getting ahead. So my concerns are definitely the safety with the fire issues. I mean, on the top of my roof, I have a superstructure. And getting back to the last gentleman's comments, which I really appreciate about the city embracing renewable energy. I had that's $130,000 project on top of the rent money I spent renovating my building. That whole project cost $130,000. So I erected 82 panels, which is the equivalent of planting 200 fully grown ponderosa trees on my roof. And they are pitched on a superstructure because I had shade issues from my neighbors on the east side. Now, the hotel going in, that's actually going to negate my sunlight. The reason I put that superstructure up was to be able to capture the sunlight and level myself with the height of their building. So now with them going up a story and butting up right next to me, I'm going to probably not see any sun on those panels until high noon, which will probably cut in half my savings, because I'm going to have shade issues again, and my panels are going to be blocked. Again, in one of these meetings a couple of years ago, the architect said something to the tune of, well, maybe we can put some panels on our roof that would service you to replace them. Again, I'm open to definitely embracing that. But I mean, the panels are extremely efficient. They were very expensive panels, and you know, my savings over a year are significant. So that's another potential expense for me. So, you know, I've got the fire safety setback because of my solar panels. I don't see how it would, even if I was okay with it. I mean, for somebody to actually get on my roof and to be able to operate a fire hose with those panels above their head, I think is practically impossible. So I don't think I can be relied on to be able to be a source for the fire department in an emergency situation. I mean, there are a couple of other minor things, but I think that's the main issue is my egress out the back. And bear in mind, my kitchen is at the back of my restaurant. So essentially, I'm going to be landlocked. And I'm just out the back of my restaurant. When I open my kitchen door at the back, I have about 10 feet of space. It's outdoor space. So we are able to open the door and walk out the back. And then it comes to like a little chain link fence, which is currently there. And then the parking lot beyond that. And we walk around, you know, I mean, we don't abuse the privilege or anything, but we do rent spaces back there and we walk to our cars. Through a little like alleyway behind the back of Thrashers. So that there's not ever been any problem or issues or concerns about a fire in my kitchen. But I can tell you, if I'm landlocked and there's a fire there, I mean, that's another concern as well. And like I said, I take great care of my building, but I'm 63. In maybe 10 years, I do see myself as being that building owner, but it's likely I'd like to maybe sell my business and pass it on to somebody else. Worked for 20 years for that business, so it definitely has some value. You know, but you know, I'm obviously not going to be able to work forever. But you know, and there are certain standards that I have that possibly the future tenant may not have. So that could, you know, the potential fire could be even more likely, let's say. I don't know but I'm extremely fastidious about all of that. So anyway, these are my concerns, and I appreciate you all listening. You know, I'm open to and willing to, you know, but I'd obviously got those concerns, financial concerns on my end and safety concerns, and also the shade issues. I'm not sure, you know, I was told at the time those panels were installed that there are certain laws that protect already existing renewable energy sources, which I'm trying to look at now to see what they might be. And that's not to sort of throw a spanner in anyone's work, but I would love to, if my panels are going to be shaded, to have the opportunity to make up for it somehow. Anyway, that's it from me, and I appreciate you listening to me, and look forward to moving forward.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address the Planning Commission? Sir?
Mark Saunders.
Yes, sir.
And again, I'm the president of the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association. We have remarks prepared for the Board of Adjustment, but since I'm here today and it came up, if you won't mind, I'd just like to tell you what we plan on telling the Board of Adjustment. And that is, we are animately opposed to anyone ever getting a 50% change in a FAR. We believe the FAR is there for a reason. It's to control the bulk of the building. And I can tell you, in the 20 or so years that I've owned property here in Rehoboth, I know many, many friends and homeowners, including ourselves, that have built our houses. And those people today don't have a shed or they don't have an extra deck, or they don't have a swimming pool because they went by the rules. They followed the FAR. And I warn you, I warn the Board of Adjustment, if you were to even think about giving somebody a 50% adjustment, that would be an insult and a slap in the face to every homeowner in the city of Rehoboth Beach who has ever followed the rules. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. There being no one else, that public comment section of the meeting will close. Ms. Womack, at the risk of making you unhappy, I have missed the approval of minutes on the agenda and would like to take that up now. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 10, 2021 and October 8, 2021?
I move to approve.
Move.
Ms. Hunter?
I move or second Commissioner Mouch's motion, whichever works.
All right, I have Ms. Macha and I have Mr. Ellison as well. Is there any discussion of this?
Yes.
Mr. Strange?
Yes, I was not here for the September 10th meeting, so they need to be voted on separately, so I can abstain from that one, but approve the second one.
All right, then I will consider a motion to approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the September 10th minutes are approved. Let's now, is there a motion to approve the October 8th, 2021 minutes of the Planning Commission?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Ellison?
You're muted, Jim.
Yeah, all right, thanks. On page 4, it says something about the far greater than 76% than what is permitted. That may have been a number that was used, but that number kind of is meaningless when you look at it. I think it might be better if it said that the FAR is 153% greater than what is permitted, or 53% greater, whichever is correct. But there's a little bobbling of the language there, and I think that does need to be fixed.
Mr. West, can you help us with that? The number I've heard from time to time is 50%.
We're going from FAR 2 to 3, or what was proposed?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if it would be in the range of 50%, I'd have to look at the exact numbers.
Okay, so
higher.
If we revise this to say is in the range of 50% greater.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the 76% came from, but
Okay.
it would be 53 or 50, in the range of 50% higher.
All right, well, that, Mr. Ellison, does that address your concern?
That's acceptable to me.
All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes as revised?
So move.
And a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, please.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes of October 8, 2021 are approved. Thank you. The next matter is new business. And what I would like to ask the city solicitor or the planning commission solicitor and the new vice chair, if you would consider reviewing a possible amendment to the bylaws to require an applicant before this body to designate a representative for purposes of communication with the planning commission and city staff. We're trying to make the process more streamlined so that the city staff and the planning commission has a point of contact and not multiple points of contact who may or may not be consistent with each other. So would ask if does anyone object to at least referring that to the vice chair and Glenn Mandalis for consideration. Okay, hearing no objections.
But I have a question. Sorry.
Sure.
So are you suggesting, Mike, that if there are questions of the city that we go through one person here that's designated?
No, I think it's the reverse.
No, it's the other way.
Right. I think the chair is suggesting that we have one member of the applicant team who's their designated point of contact, and that would be the individual from the project team who would be contacting the city with questions. And we're finding that on some of the projects going on, multiple members of the project team are contacting the city, and we're not really sure sometimes who's giving the right information and those sorts of things. We'd like one designated member of the applicant team to be the point of contact with the city.
And so, sorry, just for further clarification, that wouldn't be the city planner?
No, this would be a member of the applicant's team that
Right,
would
I
be
understand
designated.
That connection to the city wouldn't be the city planner?
No, they can contact whoever whoever is the appropriate person. If it's a building inspector issue, they contact the building inspector. If it's a scheduling issue, they contact the city secretary. If it's a legal issue, it goes to Glenn Mendalis. We're simply trying to streamline the process so that the city is able to communicate with and respond to a designated individual and a representative of the applicant's team, because that's not the process right now, and it makes it difficult.
I understand. I guess I'm just puzzled. I thought that was part of the putting in place for projects. So the applicant has a single person to come to that they can ask a variety of questions or get information around.
That's not the way it's working now at the present time.
I understand, but I'm just saying, is it the city planner, the person with the city that an applicant or someone from their team would be calling into?
They may, if it's a zoning or that type question. Within his duties are within certain areas and certain expertise. He's not the building inspector. He's not the city solicitor, so he's not the city secretary. So they may find it necessary to contact any one of those folks with the appropriate question.
Right, understood. I guess I'm just thinking about what we're trying to potentially put in place here. So let's just say, going forward, after we all agree on this, an applicant or someone from their team would call into the city planner, and the city planner would be the person that actually goes to the city secretary or the building inspector or whoever to ask the question on behalf of that project?
No. No,
Okay.
what we're saying is that the city side of this, the planning commission side of this will not change. It's from the applicant side that we were trying to streamline the process so we have a designated point of contact with the applicant.
I think what the proposal is that the applicant has an attorney and an engineer and sometimes a planner and the owner themselves. And what the city's trying to do in this proposal is designate one person from their team who is the point of contact. So if the city's building official needs to contact someone from the applicant's team, they're not wondering if they're contacting the engineer that's on the plan or the solicitor or their attorney or the owner of record, but which member of their team is the best available person to speak for their team.
I got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, is there any objection to that referral to Mr. Mendalis and the vice chair? All right. Thank you so much.
Mike.
Yes, sir.
I have a matter I want to bring up under new business. I don't know if you're ready for that or not.
Yes, sir. I think we're past the issue that we just talked about, so yes, sir.
All right. Well, I don't know how this happened, and I don't know who authorized our attorney, Glenn, to write a letter to the court saying that we would not be represented in the clear space case by him. I also understand that not all the record has gone up. And when I saw that letter, I was enthralled about that. I immediately called our chair, Mike, and I said, "Are you aware of this?" He said, "No, I'm not." That tells me that nobody on the planning commission, not one of us, was contacted prior to the letter going to the court. That's very disturbing to me. It's a decision to make as a planning commission as to whether or not one of our decisions is represented by counsel in the circuit, in the court. I guess here it's called the Court of Chancellery, not the Circuit Court. And I'm very disturbed by that, primarily because Clear Space's record and our decision in Clear Space is actually the material issue in that matter. It's the relevant issue. what that case is an appeal from the Board of Commissioners overturning our decision. I'm very disturbed by it. I'd like to have an executive session put on our agenda in the near term for us to discuss that. We should be represented in the court. Our decision should be represented in the court, and the full record of our decision should go to the court. So I don't know where the decision was made. I don't know how only part of the record was sent. And I'm very glad that the attorney for ClearSpace has asked that the full record go forward. We really need to know how and why this happened, and it should not happen again. So I know that it's not very popular for me to say these things, but if we're going to have due process and we're going to have a fair decision by the court, our board's decision should be made, and on behalf of us, it should be argued before the court. I'm more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say. Thank you.
I have had discussions with Glenn Mendelis about this issue, and I've asked him, and he has agreed during his city solicitor's report update for us at each meeting that he will update this planning commission on any litigation involving prior actions by the planning commission. And I hope that that would rectify your concerns.
Well, it doesn't. It covers Glenn. If Glenn has a conflict, he should have raised it. The city has the city has an opportunity to appoint an attorney to represent us in that case, just like it does in any other case. Just because the Board of Commissioners didn't agree with us doesn't mean that our decision should not be defended. And we should have an attorney hired by the city to represent us. And I'd like this planning commission to go into an executive session to discuss these issues in more detail.
That is fine, Chair, if at some point we want to do an executive session. I mean, I'll tell you the basis of it. And again, it's not an agenda item, so I can't get too far into it. But
I don't want to have it on the public record, Glenn, and I don't have to have the executive session today. But it should be an executive session with you and the planning commission.
At your discretion, Chair. It's fine with me. But we can talk about it out. You don't have to decide.
Yeah, we need to figure out when to do that, Steve, given what's coming agenda-wise.
Well, I don't know when the case is set for hearing. We might find out when the schedule. Go ahead.
So as you said, one of the positions taken by Max Walton on behalf of the city is that the entire record need not be sent up based upon a Superior Court decision on a certiorari matter similar to this one. The attorney for ClearSpace, Sean Tucker, has filed exceptions to that, which is challenging whether the entire record should go up or not. He has requested oral argument on that issue, and there's been some limited briefing on it. I just saw an email since we've been sitting here where the judge has agreed that there will be oral argument on the record issue, but a date has not been set yet. So the point is that this case is in the infancy stage. It's nothing of, other than deciding the issue of the record, which hasn't occurred yet, and there's going to be a hearing set to do that, nothing else has happened.
I appreciate that, Glenn. And I understand, this is a bit of an awkward position for you since you represent both the board and us. But the bottom line is we should be represented. We should have an attorney and the full record should go up. I'd like to have that discussion with the other members of the Planning Commission. Several of you are attorneys. You know exactly what I'm talking about. In an executive session to be sent sometime after our Thursday meeting on the 18th, sometime in early December, perhaps. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we'll look into that. Mr. Mendelis, do you have anything to supplement your report?
No, that was actually it. I wanted to talk about the ClearSpace case and the status of it, but that is the status at this point. So I don't have anything in addition to that.
Mike, you do have a hand up. I think it's.
I'm sorry?
You have a hand up from the public. I don't know if that's a mistake or not, but it's been up for a while.
Rachel, I'm having problems hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better.
I said that there's a hand up from the public. I don't know if that's been up for a while. Do you see it?
No.
No.
Interesting. Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr.
I have one
Strange.
question for Glenn,
Yes,
if I may.
Mr. Strange, go ahead.
I know we won the beach walk case, but has there been any other activity on that from the applicant with regard to that, to the city?
There has been. Thanks for asking. So there is a motion for re-argument that's been filed by Rich Forston on behalf of the beach walk applicant. There has not been briefing or a decision on that motion yet. So yeah, I think we're confident that that motion will not be granted for re-argument, but it may be heard by the court. The court hasn't even decided whether they'll hear re-argument yet. So, but there has been a request for it.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Tom West, any report from you, sir?
Just in terms of status, the state review for the Belhaven Hotel was released, and I sent a copy to the Planning Commission members when that became available. So it's on their website for the Delaware Preliminary Land Planning Assessment, and you should have received that. If you haven't, let me know. Otherwise, really just coordinating whatever activities with these applications and going through, as all of you have, the drafts for the comprehensive development plan. But that's it, unless you have questions on activities.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. West?
One hand. One
Huh,
hand.
Mike, I'm sorry to cut back in. Can you hear me? It's Rachel.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there is a hand up. It looks like it's Richard Perry. It's been up for quite a while. I don't know exactly know what his question is around, but you might want to at least ask.
Okay, asking IT to take a look at that to see.
Hand is raised. Do you want
Julie Davis?
Mr. Chairman, he raised his hand after you exited citizen comment.
Okay, what's the solution here? Is Mr. Perry seeking to come back and speak again or not?
Yes.
All right, would you please proceed, sir?
Okay. I did raise my hand immediately after Mr. Saunders made his final comments when you asked if there was anyone else who wanted to add to citizen comment.
Okay, well, I apologize. This virtual meeting stuff is still imperfect.
I believe me, I've been there. I understand. I just wanted to reply briefly to Mr. Saunders' comment about FAR, to simply state that the FAR is a false narrative, and it's time we accept that. I also wanted to ask a question about the meeting on the 18th with respect to that matter. Will the applicant and the public both have an opportunity to comment at that time, or is it a limited scope?
One moment, please. The applicant, basically, Mr. Perry, the applicant's presentation was presented and concluded at our last meeting. The Planning Commission discussion of that application was taken and concluded. And the matter was continued today, as you know, for public, in the receipt of public speaking. And now we're concluding that. The applicant requested, and we have specifically said we will conduct a review and discussion of any issues or concerns related to the proposed project with the applicant on the November 18th meeting. That's the purpose of that meeting. It's not to start the concept review. Again, this is a concept review, not a site plan review, as you're very familiar with. And so consequently, they've asked for this meeting, this discussion and review, and the Planning Commission will conduct that with the applicant on September 18th. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, just to be clear, then there will be open discussion between and among the members of the Planning Commission and the applicant at the November 18th special meeting.
Yes, sir. I believe that's correct. Does anybody see it differently? That's what the code provides, and that's what we intend to do.
Right. Could I also ask, unless you want me to resubmit it, that you include as part of the record on the 18th, the 9-page exhibit that I submitted for this meeting?
Yes, sir. I believe that's been distributed to the Planning Commission, and I would certainly ask that the city secretary include that in the record for this application.
Okay, I would just like it embedded in the agenda for the November 18th meeting so that the public can focus on it at that meeting while you're having your discussion.
Yes, sir. Well, the city secretary, I hope, is online here and would ask her to comply with your request.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just have one comment, if you will allow me, on your proposal with respect to a point person. As I understood your comment at the very beginning, it sounded to me as though the point person would also be the point person to have conversations with the Planning Commission. Is that your intent? Wouldn't that be an ex parte communication? Can you clarify that?
No, it would not be an ex parte communication. What I'm asking to be considered is basically what is the day-to-day contact between an applicant and the city, its staff. And by contacting, let's say, the city secretary, for example, if it's something that the chair needs to look at or consider, it's forwarded to me. So it is a process. And again, all we're trying to do is make sure that we have a designated point of contact with the applicant so that multiple requests from multiple people do not create problems from how to respond to those inquiries. That's all.
I think that probably needs a little further clarification in whatever the city solicitor, presents. I don't think you're trying to sanction ex parte communications.
No, I mean, that's why I've referred it to the city solicitor. It's just for referral for him to consider and the vice chair as well, and to report back what they find.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to speak again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. I think we have our November 18th meeting scheduled.
Mike, you've got to.
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Ellison.
You have to unmute Julie. You have to unmute Julie.
Julie Davis.
Here.
But Jim has been called on, so.
All right. Back to our planner's report. I do not believe that we have received the full and final plus report on the Belhaven.
I think you're right.
Asking if we had received it. I know that I have not.
Yes, I asked him that before the meeting and would ask that he respond.
So I obtained a copy from their website. That's their letter to the applicants. So that's available. It's on their website, and I distributed via email to the Planning Commission's email. The full report will come out once the applicants have responded to the state with any follow-up, and the state considers their comments, and then we'll issue and send it to the city. So what I sent out is what they've provided on their website, just because we had questions about it is when it's available. But you're right that the applicants have time to reply back or respond back to any of the comments in the state letter. And the state, and I'm not sure the time frame, I'd have to check on that, but then they will issue their official report to the city at that time.
All right, thank you.
Julie Davis.
I would just like to say that, at least for my purposes, it would be very helpful if we had a written report from the city planner, from Tom, for our meeting next Thursday on the Belhaven. I think there's some confusion, I think, with respect to, what are have they in fact proposed? How does it conform or not to the zoning code? There's been a question this afternoon as the extent to which the FAR in the zoning code has been exceeded by the current plans. a written report from our city planner. I would be very helpful to me, and I suspect to other members of the commission.
Sure, I could put together a report on the conceptual plan, what we have, and it's not the detailed site plan review that we'll do later, but I can give out some how it relates to our current zoning ordinance, what some of the context is, and try and clear up any clarification on what we're looking at that time.
Thank you.
Steve Kaufman.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I agree with Julie that we should have a written analysis by our planner. I'd like them also to include the current recently approved new FAR definition. And the reason I say that is I personally think that even at 2, under this new definition, that this applicant could not meet the current requirements because the zones, when they were created, including the commercial zones, did not anticipate this type of a restrictive FAR, which essentially includes every single element of a project, not just the interior spaces, but any open spaces, pools, patios, open decks, HVA systems, etc. And that's one of the reasons that I spoke against the adoption of it at the time it was adopted. So when we get this analysis, I'd like to have that taken into account, but I definitely would like to see a written report from our planner. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Hunter.
Just going back to the point that Jim Ellison raised with respect to the PLUS report, the initial report, I did receive it, but I don't think that and I would defer to Ann Womack on this. I don't think it's in the official record of this body. In other words, I think I received it in an email from Tom, which I very much appreciate. But I think just to make sure that the process is correct, it should go into the agenda packet for the discussion on November 18.
All right, ma'am. Michael Strange.
Yes, although this is a legal question and I'm not an attorney, but I'll ask Glenn to comment on this. One of the things I think is a problem here, which just been requested, is with regard to the planner, is generally speaking, is applicants before they've put a site plan into the city. Now that if we have a single contact person that they talk to, or I'm sorry, that we talk to, there may be dialogues and discussions that they don't wish to become public yet, and in fact shouldn't be shared yet with the Planning Commission because a site plan has not been submitted to the city. It's preliminary documentation and preliminary discussions that are in fact confidential to that individual and the city at that point. If and when they elect to submit a site plan based on those dialogues, then it becomes an official document that we can comment on. And in the case of Tom West, who provides comments to us as an actual planner, it would inhibit the public, if they're deciding to do a major project or a minor project, in being fully forthright with Tom as to what they're doing, if in fact it then comes to us in the form of a preliminary assessment that he made. I'll ask Glenn to comment on that, but I think it's inappropriate to require a report before an actual final plan has been presented to us.
I guess the way I'd respond to that is I've worked with Tom, a lot in other jurisdictions. Generally, his reports are, sort of factual based. Here's what they were proposing. Here is, right. The sort of the FAR that applies. They're in this zoning district. Tom rarely at this stage will make any sort of a recommendation about whether the project should be approved, shouldn't be approved. So I think, Tom, if your report would intend to be of the nature that I generally see you do, which is just a very factual, sort of almost a report on the facts and not so much an analysis as to appropriateness or not. If that's
Right.
what you're intending, I don't think there's any problem with that sort of a report.
Right,
coming
I
into
think
the-
it's was to clear up any confusion about what we're reviewing. It's not a report on compliance with the details of the code or recommend or saying, going through all of the aspects that we do in a site plan review. It's more of a conceptual plan to try and, I think, just describe what the plan, where we are in the process and what the Planning Commission's looking at for the Planning Commission and for the public. But it's not what would be the same review as how does this meet all the engineering requirements for compliance that would come later with a site plan review.
No, but what I'm indicating is the applicant, before it's become formal at that point, may strictly be coming to you to get a better idea of what the requirements are, but they may not want any of that made public yet from a competitive standpoint or a commercial standpoint. And so that's what really I was saying is just by pure accident, even though you're not going into the specifics, it may make everyone else aware that something is going on. I know at the state level, you could have private meetings with the state that were not discoverable and were not made public at any time because they were just requesting input and guidance, generally speaking, to get an idea of what's going on. And that's what I was referring to, Glenn.
Well, having started this conversation, I think, all I was suggesting is that we have a concept plan on file. Our duty, as I understand it, our obligation is to review and make comments to the applicant on that concept plan. But having gotten the concept plan in this big bundle of these huge documents, not being an engineer or an architect, it would be helpful to know, for my purposes, exactly what is being proposed. And I don't know that it's inappropriate to point out the extent to which what's on record as a concept plan for us to review, comment on, and make recommendations on, the extent to which it does or doesn't comply with the zoning ordinance.
No, I'm referring to activities that would occur before it's even a concept plan submitted to us. These are dialogues that go on before they've even gotten that far.
But we have a concept plan submitted to us, and I agree with Julie. We're just asking for the planning, our planning advisor to give us an analysis of what it, whether it meets the code or not as the code exists. And that's why I asked that. Wait a minute.
I agree with you, Steve, on the current one, but everyone was asking for in the future and on future ones. I was referring to.
I was only asking for what's on our plate for the Belhaven next Thursday.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
All right, and that's why I also asked that Tom take into account the SNP adoption of the FAR definition, because it is the law. Okay. Thank you. Lawyers always make things complicated, I understand.
Well, there's an old saying, Steve, if you have two lawyers, you have three opinions.
I think this has been a really good dialogue. I think this is a great group of people, even though we don't always agree.
All right, now I just wanted to remind everyone, we have a special meeting on Thursday, November 18th at 2 o'clock. At that time, we should have a draft agenda, a draft CDP that will be presented and released to the public and the Board of Commissioners at that time. So that the purpose of the meeting is 2 agenda items, but the first is to discuss what we will have before us from Wallace Montgomery, our consultant. And that's going to be an interesting time, and I hope everyone can make it for that meeting. And then we will then set up a schedule for going forward in terms of when the next draft is ready to go, when the next draft is turned back to us. We will have another Planning Commission meeting. At the current time, it is anticipated, it's anticipated, that we will have a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners and the Planning Commission on Wednesday, December 8th. That, I believe, if Ms. Womack, have any new applications been timely submitted for the Planning Commission's consideration?
I have not received any new applications.
All right.
Mike,
Yes, Rachel. Matt.
sorry, another question for you. Is there an update on 511 Stokely? As I was reviewing the minutes.
Yes, I asked Mr. Mandelis to look into that because I don't want something continuing to hang on this body's agenda. Glenn, if you'll let her know, please, what you've done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I should have mentioned it in my report as well. I did reach out to Carlton Savage, who was the engineer working with them. They have elected to withdraw that application from the Planning Commission's docket, so it's no longer before you.
Thank you.
Anything else before we adjourn? Thank everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.